Hi everyone, and welcome to the Women's Show. My name is Nicole Seah and I will be your moderator for this show. So to kick off, I would like to introduce some of the panelists that we have here. So tell me your name, the constituency you're contesting in, and as a little bit of an icebreaker, let's share something about yourself that not many people know.
Hi, I'm Raeesah, and I'm standing in Sengkang GRC. And something that not many people know is that my name actually means woman leader. So here I am.
Hi, my name is Gerald Giam. I'm contesting in Aljunied GRC. And something that not many people know is that I'm a tutor to my own children for their academics. They are both in primary school right now. But unfortunately, I'm MIA right now because I'm in the election trail.
Hi, my name is Chen Chen. I'm the candidate for Punggol West SMC. The things that people doesn't know about me is my name is actually from one of the old actress.
Hi, my name is Jamus, like Raeesah. I'm contesting in Sengkang GRC. I don't have that much that's interesting in my life, but I like to think that the reason why I'm on this panel is to lend some important gender balance, because after all, men are not represented enough in panels most of the time.
Okay, so thanks very much everyone for the introduction. I think when we talk about women's issues, we do see that Singapore in recent years has made quite a number of improvements to close the gap on gender inequality. But I thought we can use this show as an opportunity to discuss what we can do better. So before we start, let's hear from Party Chair Sylvia Lim, who will share her thoughts on what more we can do to close the gap on gender inequality and how we can move forward from there.
Good evening, everyone. COVID-19 has caused much havoc, but it has also shone a spotlight on the challenges faced by women in society. For instance, Singaporeans were advised to stay home to save lives. Nothing wrong with that advice per se, but it was later reported that there were 476 domestic violence cases recorded by the Singapore Police during the first half of the circuit breaker, a 22% increase from the pre-circuit breaker monthly average. This is also a likely underestimate, as many domestic violence incidents go unreported. What about exposure to catching the virus? About 67% of the world's health workforce are women. In economic terms, a UN report found that across the world, there was significant job loss for women who tend to hold more jobs without formal protections. In Singapore, I'm thinking of the women who are food stall assistants, massage and nail therapists, nannies, etc. With everyone at home during the lockdowns, it was usually the women who ended up exhausted from caring for the family during normal working hours as well. The home-based learning for students in Singapore has also seen mothers on the whole being much more involved than fathers. So what, you may say? Well, this is an opportunity for us to re-examine society's priorities and to ask ourselves how we can do better, emerge stronger as a society. The UN urges governments to ensure that women are equally represented in all COVID-19 response planning and decision-making. At the moment, the situation in Singapore does not appear too promising. The government has put together an Emerging Stronger task force consisting of 17 persons, out of which only 2 are women. Will this be a wasted opportunity? We should note that in terms of tackling COVID-19, Taiwan and New Zealand have so far been very successful, with women leaders in charge. This brings me to my final point on women stepping up to public leadership. We have important contributions to make as leaders. Compared to men, women leaders are known to show more empathy, be more nurturing, value teamwork, communicate better, be able to multitask, have less ego issues. All right, I'm sure that our brothers have something to say about this. In the corporate arena, Singapore has also been trying to get more women onto the boards of companies with a soft target of 30%. In politics, we still have some ways to go. We have 3 female cabinet ministers out of 19, about 16%, better than the past. In the 13th Parliament, we had about 23% women MPs. Speaking as the chair of the Workers' Party, We try hard to encourage women to join the party and to stand for parliamentary elections. While more women have joined, many prefer backroom roles like grassroots work and supportive roles. A leader in an NGO once told me that women shun political parties because they find party politics just too nasty. Women politicians sometimes face more scrutiny and often from other women. And with that, I think that is enough to start the conversation. Make your vote count. Vote Workers' Party.
Sylvia ended off with an interesting quote saying, women politicians sometimes face more scrutiny and often from our sisters. So I would like to hear, perhaps we could start with Raeesah. It's your first time running for elections. Do you agree with Sylvia's statement based on what you've experienced so far?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are two important factors we have to consider, so internal and external. So Sylvia explained what the external factors are, sexism, misogyny, and also actually there are institutional and systemic barriers that women face into politics. And one of them is actually barriers to their careers and to their education because, we expect politicians to reach a certain pedigree before they step forward. Internal factors are things like unpaid labor, unfair distribution of labor at home, like caregiving and household chores. So we know that it takes a lot of effort to step into politics, and you need a lot of support, especially from family and friends. And a lot of women don't get this.
I completely agree with that, and even on a personal level. So thanks so much for sharing, Raeesah. And it's really not just about the systemic kind of challenges that we face, but at the same time, there are a lot of personal obligations that we have at home. And perhaps, now I can hear from Chen Chen. Chen Chen, you recently came back from maternity leave. If I'm not mistaken, your baby's only 3 months old. Would you like to share your experience personally? How has it been for you on the campaign trail?
Okay, maybe I will speak in Mandarin.
Sure.
Yeah. 其实在这段期间，我刚生了孩子嘛，我孩子才3个月，像你所讲的。那小孩还会想要找妈妈，所以他会一直有时会哭。那你就会我在这段期间，在竞选期间，我真的有时会有点担心。所以可能这个也是一个。对于女性来说，应该是弱势吧。
So just to quickly recap for our viewers at home, Chen Chen said that she's currently still looking after her 3-month-old kid, and because the baby's still relatively young, he's extremely attached to her, and he will cry whenever she's not around. So because she's had to spend most of her time out of home over the past couple of weeks on the campaign trail, it's been extremely challenging for her, and she does worry about him quite frequently. So maybe then we can hear from a male perspective. So we've heard from Raeesah earlier, but maybe let's hear from Gerald first. So what's your take as a male politician? Do you think that women politicians do have it harder? I mean, for example, have you ever been asked, what outfit you're wearing and what brand you're wearing before?
Well, the fact is that politicians, there's a lot of scrutiny on them all the time. And for women, the unfortunate thing is that very often the scrutiny extends to their gender as well. So there'll be comments made by sometimes both men and women about them being women and some characteristics about them. So that's a bit unfair sometimes, and I think that's something we should move away from for sure.
And it's not just that, but I think with all these things that you've outlined, right, then that would lead to lesser women being represented in politics, and obviously that has knock-on effects from that. Jamus, would you like to share from that standpoint?
Yeah, so from my perspective, which is often cross-country in nature, it's often the case that if you look at the international experience, like in the United States, women actually were granted suffrage after African American men were. And likewise, if you think about even advanced societies like Switzerland, women were only granted the right to vote at the federal level in 1971. So I think this has a long and deep history, and we see consequences for what this has become for us today. So most recently, you think back on the COVID crisis, I think many people have seen the evidence that at least among those countries that were led by female female leaders, these leaders tend to have led countries with much lower mortality rates, and they generally handle the COVID crisis much better. This often traces back, in academia, there's evidence that women tend to be much more risk neutral in the way that they evaluate risks, and they tend to place greater priority to healthcare outcomes. So I think all these tend to make them very good politicians in many ways, but also very good decision makers for specific spheres, and we lose out on that talent when we don't have women in political life.
Yeah, so what you shared is interesting because, we're not just looking at an underrepresentation of women in politics on the whole, but obviously that extends to every other area of society as well, even in the corporate world. So perhaps now, we can hear from Sengkang GRC candidate He Ting Ru, who is also Raeesah and Jamus's running mate, on what her perspectives are with regards to being a working mom and juggling these duties.
All of us wear many hats, and I am no exception. For most of my adult life, I have been a daughter, a granddaughter, a member of my community, and a worker within an economic system. In recent years, I have also become a mother and a wife, an experience that has changed me and opened my eyes in so many ways. In the past, I was incredibly lucky in never having to think too much about being a woman. Some of the most awkward encounters would have been having comments made while walking down the street, or forced laughter when confronted with comments disguised as banter. Yet when I became a mother, the world changed. 2 little lives now depend on me to keep things together. At my desk at the workplace, and at home where there are meals, bumps and fears need my attention. I find myself rushing from a school drop-off to a meeting, back for a well baby checkup, for vaccinations, all the while juggling my guilt for missing calls from the school nurse, for having to leave the office at a set time every day, and having to say no to work travel and to schedule calls after bedtime to ensure I could read them their bedtime stories and pat them to sleep. Then COVID hit, and the formal and informal support structures we took for granted were pulled from under our feet. Schools and care facilities were shut, and help from grandparents became impossible, while we adapted to a new model of working from home. Various research and data have shown that women bore the brunt, mentally and physically, of worldwide lockdowns, with the effect especially pronounced on those in underprivileged or abusive situations. Calls to abuse hotlines shot up, suggesting that the clock was turned back on progress between gender equality. For me, I enjoyed greatly participating more in my children's learning and the opportunity to spend more time with them. And I recognize that I am of course fortunate, but there have been days when I move around in a fog, sometimes finding myself taking a conference call with colleagues in Africa while trying to stop my children from emptying the kitchen drawers in search of new things to play with, knowing full well that my temper with them is short, with knock-on effects on my work performance and productivity. Stay-at-home mums or other female caregivers too are not given the support that they need. This has been a clarion call for us all. It is time to rethink our historical view of what a woman's role entails. Time to rewrite the script on what types of support and flexibility will be given to all women, no matter what roles they play. I believe that the Workers' Party will work with Singaporeans to discuss these issues and will fight in Parliament to ensure that policies are put in place to support all women. Make your vote count. Vote for the Workers' Party. Thank you.
As a working mom myself, that resonated with me on so many levels. And I think we always talk about the mental load that women face when it comes to maintaining the household or even parenting the kids. So perhaps we could start with Chen Chen. Do you agree with the concept of mental load?
在有些家庭，他们那些男性，他丈夫，他们有一些想法，就是比较传统的想法。 他们会觉得说，男人是不应该踏入厨房，家务应该是由老婆做，孩子应该是由老婆照顾。那这样的想法，可能我们要看一下他的成长环境，他们是怎么样把这个，就是他的父母是怎样教导他的。因为有些家庭会说，你是儿子嘛，儿子你去客厅看一下电视啊，家务由妹妹做啊，或者是由姐姐做的，所以这个是其实那个男生就已经开始从小就已经被这样教育大的，所以他就有那种想法，就是家务不是我，所以这样的话其实会造成他老婆的很大的压力，不只是在身体上，也是在心灵上。所以我觉得这个可能做丈夫的要稍微比较注意一下，看看是不是因为在这段期间嘛，大家都在家里办公，不可能要求老婆又办公又做家务又来洗衣煮饭看孩子，所以可能我觉得丈夫真的需要稍微照顾一下老婆，然后他的情绪还有那些帮他分担一下工作吧。
Thanks very much, Chen Chen, for your input. So for our viewers at home, I'm just going to recap very quickly in English. Some men are traditional in their outlook and they do not believe that they should be in the kitchen. So we have to look at the men's upbringing and think about how their background has contributed to this mindset. Men do need to be more hands-on, and from Chen Chen's observations, she's seen that there are some households where the sons are able to watch TV while the girls are expected to start doing housework from a very young age. So that obviously results in conditioning, and they have then the increased pressure at home to do more and take on more of the housekeeping duties and chores, such as cooking and taking care of the kids. So we do feel that at the end of the day, and Chen Chen shared, that women also cannot take the responsibility onto themselves, otherwise it might eventually result in mental and physical fallout and consequences. So Chen Chen also urges men to be a bit more understanding and to seek to be more hands-on. And I thought this was a perfect time for me to bring in Jamus. So Jamus comes in with a broader perspective on things, and in our personal interactions with him, we find that he's very much a hands-on dad and husband. So Jamus, would you like to comment on what Chen Chen has shared, and what has been your own observation in this case?
Sure, thank you, Nicole. So one of the things that happens in our marriage is often the case that we end up splitting, not so much by gender-defined roles, but in terms of what we tend to perhaps detest a little less in doing in terms of housework. So in my wife's case, she tends to take on the load of doing the laundry, but she really dislikes doing ironing. And in contrast, I feel that I can just go in my own world, listen to my podcasts, and so I do the ironing, and we do that kind of a split in the household. But more generally, I think from the household economics perspective, is really frustrating when you see, for instance, a woman who has significant earning power outside of the home, for example, and yet when she comes home, she's kind of expected to take a disproportionate load of the household chores. And that is really inefficient, right? Because ultimately she faces a greater cost in doing so for her time. So what we really want to encourage is for a greater flexibility in thinking about how different members of the household contribute to the chores that have to be done.
Thanks so much, Jamus, for that. We will also hear from yourself, Chen Chen. You've recorded a video, and you've been on maternity leave, and you have some observations on the challenges faced by both pregnant women as well as women returning to the workforce. So let's all take a look.
大家好，我是陈真真，工人党榜儿西选区的候选人。今天我想跟大家讨论托儿中心。我在这段期间拿了产假。家里有父母和公婆帮忙照顾孩子，现在不需要为了托儿服务而烦恼，比较幸运。但是，一些家庭就不这么幸运了。父母为了养家糊口，孩子几个月大就需要带到托儿中心。在疫情后，大家都开始在家办公，给很多父母造成巨大的压力。母亲们都同时需要办公，照顾孩子，充当他们的老师、厨师，还有玩伴，压力更大。托儿中心对这些父母来说是非常重要的。 大家都会觉得非常难找婴幼儿托管中心，尤其是在淡逼尼、盛港、榜儿、后港这些地区，这些地方有很多新主屋，年轻的夫妇多，托儿中心供不应求。工人党认为，在这些地区可以开设多一些托儿中心。开设托儿中心应该是以地区发展和需求而改变。大家也知道，托管中心的费用并不便宜，一些托儿中心是没有政府津贴的。工人党主张放宽补助津贴的条件，给父母亲更多托儿中心的选择。我与工人党同僚，无论在国会或地方，都会为选民争取更完善、更全面的托儿服务。请投工人党一票，让您的一票成就未来。谢谢。
So, Chen Chen, you touched on the challenges that some parents face when seeking childcare support while working. Now we know that Jamus is very good at ironing, but I think with regards to Gerald, do you think that the Singapore system is doing enough to create a conducive environment for parenting?
Well, I think it's important that men and women are not pigeonholed into specific gender roles in the society, where, for example, men are expected to go out to work, whereas the women are expected to stay at home and look after the kids. I think it's important to be able to see that that is a rather old-fashioned way of thinking, and we want to move away from this. And that's one of the reasons why in our manifesto, we have a proposal on shared parental leave, whereby there's 24 weeks of parental leave that can be shared between the father and the mother, and with a minimum of 4 weeks that has to be taken by the father. So this is our way of encouraging men to step out and take a bigger role in terms of child raising.
Agree. And imagine how much the dynamics would shift if, we made the parenting responsibilities 50-50 across the board. That would be really interesting to see. So thanks so much for sharing your observations. Let's move on to our next speaker, Marine Parade GRC candidate Fadli, who will be touching on minority and gender discrimination in the workplace.
Dewi dan Ratu cantik berbudi mengisi kisah dalam hayalan. Lebih mulia watak Sri Kandi, hidup menegak keadilan. Sepanjang umur saya, ibu saya lah tiang saya. Beliau membesarkan saya dan adik-beradik saya sambil bertugas dalam pelbagai pekerjaan. Hasil kerja keras beliau yang membantu kami menyara pengajian kami di universiti. Namun, tidak selalu mudah baginya mencari kerja dan pekerjaannya tidak selalu bergaji lumayan. Walaupun beliau terus belajar dan telah memperolehi pelbagai kepakaran, semakin sukar bagi beliau mencari kerja semakin beliau meningkat umur. Ibu saya tidak keseorangan dalam menghadapi masalah ini. Ramai wanita menerima gaji lebih kurang daripada apa yang diraih kaum lelaki buat pekerjaan yang sama. Sebuah kajian dari Kementerian Tenaga Manusia mendapati bahawa wanita mempunyai gaji bulanan rata-rata 6% lebih kurang berbanding lelaki buat tugas kerja yang sama pada tahun 2018. Jurang pendapatan jantina ini mungkin lebih teruk bagi wanita dari bangsa minoriti atau yang lebih berumur. Para warga Singapuraku, diskriminasi jantina tidak patut dianggap sebagai isu yang hanya menjajas wanita. Memperkasakan peluang wanita untuk meraih pendapatan yang adil tidak sahaja memanfaatkan mereka, tetapi menolong kita semua membina struktur keluarga yang kukuh. Kami di Parti Pekerja percaya bahawa masyarakat yang lebih adil harus dibina dengan penyertaan wanita dalam pekerjaan secara adil. Ini bermula dengan perundangan yang mampu membawa perubahan bermakna di rumah dan di kerja. Panduan Amalan Pekerjaan Progresif dan Adil atau TAFEP yang wujud sekarang memberi garis pandu bagi membentuk tempat kerja yang lebih adil bagi warga Singapura. Namun, amalan berdiskriminasi masih tidak merupakan kesalahan yang membawa sebarang denda. Kita memerlukan rangkai kerja perundangan anti-diskriminasi yang lebih luas dan kukuh dan mampu melawan segala bentuk diskriminasi dari segi bangsa, umur atau jantina. Inilah apa yang dituntut Parti Pekerja dalam manifesto kami. Parti Pekerja akan pastikan bahawa semua wanita tidak diberat sebelah di tempat kerja. Saya dan rakan sekerja saya akan bertungkus lumus di dalam dan luar parlimen untuk memastikan tempat kerja yang lebih inklusif. Sokongilah kami demi mencipta masyarakat yang lebih adil. Manfaatkan undi anda dan undi Parti Pekerja.
So, based on Fadli's observations, we have a tripartite alliance of fair employment practices that's meant to combat discrimination in the workplace. But I thought it would be interesting to hear from Raeesah. On the policy front, given your experience in activist work and targeting certain segments of society, would you be able to share whether this has been truly effective in combating discrimination in the workplace?
Yeah, so actually TUFEP is not enforceable by law. It's just a series of guidelines. And I really want to share stories I've heard through my work and also through reading some articles online. There's lots of stories of women who are pregnant or were pregnant and told their bosses and were asked to leave. There are stories of women who took too much leave to care for their kids and also were unfairly dismissed. And there's also an issue of sexual harassment at the workplace. And we've seen a lot of women come forward reporting it, but there's no protection for whistleblowers. So I think we really need to look at legislation in this country and make sure we enact strong legislation that enforces anti-discrimination laws.
What I particularly found interesting about your response was that, when we talk about gender discrimination in the workplace, it's not just about one issue, but you've identified so many intricate issues that affect different types of women differently. So I thought we could then hear from Jamus. Jamus, obviously discrimination has been something that we've touched on quite keenly in the Workers' Party manifesto. Would you be able to share some of the solutions that we've put forward as a result of all of these issues?
Sure. I guess I get targeted with all these policy wonky things, but essentially the Workers' Party manifesto does explicitly talk about having legislation to target anti-discrimination, whether it is by age or by gender or by race, at least in the context of Singapore. Now, what's important to emphasize is we also have elements which are a little bit more practical, and we extend the notion of anti-discrimination. So we want, for instance, to have no discrimination against people with disabilities. And in fact, we call on the civil service to be the one to take the lead in addressing individuals with disabilities and taking them into the civil service. Another practical way is to abolish a retirement age. So this is not to say that you have to keep working forever in life, but rather, many jobs now are no longer as menial as they used to be. And it's very nice to have the additional flexibility to continue to contribute if you feel like you wish to do so. So that's another element that is in our policy manifesto.
Agree with you so much, Jamus. And I think the one thing that you spoke about, which, at first glance might not sound nice on paper. So when we talk about abolishing retirement age, people might go, does this mean that you're expected to work until you drop? But, clearly what this means is that, if you're telling people that they have the option, whether they want to work until an older age or not, that could go a long way in combating some some assumptions and some very misleading kind of perceptions about, an elderly workforce. So I think that's interesting that you said that. The other thing that we also wanted to talk about was for all these change to really be enforced and start from a government level, because I think when all of these things are enforced in the highest office in our land, that's where you really start to see the changes becoming more accepted and more mainstream in society. So let's go into our last but not least, let's go into our Marine Parade GRC candidate, Ron Tan. He has a speech where he will touch more on some of the issues facing older women in the workforce.
Here is a quick pop quiz. Do you know how much it costs our seniors to meet a basic living standard for their retirement? In 2019, researchers calculated that singles aged 65 and above would need at least $1,379 a month to meet basic living standards. A married couple would need $2,351 a month. This begs the follow-up. How many of our seniors are prepared for retirement? Singaporeans need to ensure that their income is adequate. Their work has to be paid fairly to to have a sufficient pot for their retirement. However, for many women, that is easier said than done. Studies have estimated that women may earn over $500,000 less than their men over their careers. That is enough to purchase a 4-room flat in Marine Crescent in cash, leaving enough spare money for renovation as well. This only reduces family income and perpetuates economic and social inequity. The Workers' Party believes that policy should be drafted to address this. The Workers' Party proposes that all employers, public and private, with 10 or more employees must report to the MOM on the gender pay gap for the same job role. The data should be aggregated, anonymized, and published for each industry sector. This data is the first step on the route towards closing gender wage gap. Additionally, we need to address unpaid labor in our society that is primarily provided by women. Unpaid labor are tasks such as running of households and the provision of care. For example, a stay-at-home mom who looks after her children and her elder parents, or the same elderly parents who still help out around the house. While not included in traditional measurements of the GDP, such labor is crucial for a smooth and efficient economy. Those that undertake unpaid work earn less throughout their working life. They end up more vulnerable in their old age as they often have inadequate CPF balances. During our residents' engagements, they have shared that they receive lower salaries when they re-enter the workforce. Why? Due to household duties, they have lesser working experiences as compared to their peers. Recognizing unpaid labor, regardless of age or gender, is the first step to address the disadvantages faced by those that take the majority of a household's unpaid labor. Only by recognizing the contributions of unpaid workers can we start developing safeguards for our workers. This will ensure that no workers end up lacking resources in what should be their golden years. We in the Workers' Party believe that incremental steps are the key to effective policy making in tackling social inequalities. As the saying goes, every journey begins with a single step. We ask that you walk with us. Make your vote count. Vote the Workers' Party.
So, Ron spoke a lot about unpaid labor and how that's currently not being attributed to GDP growth. So I thought we could hear from some of the panelists about their thoughts on this. Raeesah, do you have any thoughts on this and whether that somehow plays a part in a very unequal distribution in the household?
Yeah, definitely. So I really want to talk about unpaid labor and how that affects a woman's retirement. So there's a lot of women who spend their whole lives caregiving, caretaking, and taking on the burden of housework, and they don't see that reciprocated in their finances. So we see women who are now in retirement age who don't have enough funds to support them through the rest of this time that they have here. A lot of them have their spouses who have passed or their husbands who have stopped working, and they suddenly see a decline in the retirement savings.
And that's so worrying, right? Because, these are issues that we don't see immediately, and they probably only kick in, once the woman is much older, and by then it's too little, too late. So, I thought it'd be interesting to then hear from Gerald. What more do you think we need to do in this regard, to make sure that there's a more equitable distribution of household duties and to really reinforce, family and work kind of arrangements?
Well, you see, there are some times where within a family, the wife might actually be earning more in her career than the husband would be. So in those cases, it might make sense to have them swap that role so that the wife is going out to work and the husband stays at home to look after the kids and the family, because that might be a practical arrangement that some families would be able to consider. In fact, I got some friends who have that arrangement and it's working out very, very well for them. So I think it's something that should be celebrated in our society and something that should be encouraged for those families who do see that as a viable option.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that, you were talking about women who are earning more than men, and as a result of that, the men are choosing to be stay-at-home dads, because I do see that happening in my industry nowadays. But, the fact that we respond to it as if it's a very novel concept means that we still have a pretty long way to go with regards to it being a very mainstream and very widely accepted kind of arrangement in society. So I think right now it's a very interesting time for us to turn back to Chen Chen. Chen Chen, would you like to share more on why some women actually don't really want to go back to the workforce, or what really impedes their career development?
在有些情况下，有些母亲因为不希望错过孩子的成长时期，所以他们愿意放弃他们的高薪工作来照顾他的孩子。但是照顾孩子不是说几年的时间，他们需要12到15年的时间来陪伴这个孩子成长。所以在这段期间，他们没薪水、没工作。等到他想回去工作的时候，他已经跟社会脱节。那在这段期间，可能他的工作上可能有一些改变，甚至是一些科技化，他们无法跟上，所以这些妇女只能选择做一些比较简单的工作，或者是低薪的工作，比如说在超级市场做排货员啊、收银员啊，所以这其实对他们来说是一个非常不公平的一件事情，因为等到他回到工作岗位，他的薪水也跌了，然后他失去了他的公积金，他之前很长一段时间没工作的那些薪水，等到孩子长大的时候，孩子愿不愿意照顾他，愿不愿意养他，还是另外一个问题。所以在这样的情况下，其实是非常的对女人来说非常不公平。
Thanks so much, Chen Chen, for sharing that. I think you've made some very illuminating and what I would say unseen observations that are not very obvious to many of us. So I'm just, for the benefit of viewers at home, I'm going to recap what Chen Chen spoke about. She said that in some situations, some mothers do not want to miss out on their children's development, and they might already be in very professional high work positions, but they are more likely to give it up just to spend time with their children. And as the child is growing, we would see that there is a window of about 10 plus years where the woman would have effectively lost the prime of her career. So when she's going back to work, then it's very difficult for her to adjust and make that mid-career switch, because by then there would have been leaps in technological advancements that make it very difficult for her to adapt. So it would be difficult for her to readjust, and there is absolutely no way to make up for that lost time. Because of that, a lot of such women do end up in what we call either very part-time, flexible work arrangements, or they even end up in much lower salaried jobs like blue-collar jobs. So it's more of like they don't really have as wide above of career options as they used to. And because of that, it's not a fair arrangement for these women, because they have borne the brunt of the real opportunity cost when it comes to having children. So Jamus, you're an economist. I thought then it would be interesting for us to come in with the knock-on economic effects of when women are just penalized this way in the workforce.
So of course, what this segment has really brought up is the notion that there is, in fact, a real gender wage gap, and this is something that the party manifesto has targeted as trying to address. Now, the issues discussed in this panel also allude to some reasons why this gender gap may exist. And of course, one of these examples is that if you have a child, the maternity penalty is real. Similarly, Raeesah mentioned that women may choose different professions. So if you choose a different profession, or if you tend to work part-time as opposed to full-time, you would have a different salary as well. Now, even taking all that into account, is still the case, though, that the gender wage gap exists. And in developing countries, it's something to the order of 50-something cents to the dollar. And then in advanced countries, the gap still exists, 80 cents or so to the dollar, as widely cited. Now, how do we then narrow this gap? I think here some targeted legislation on the part of the government will go a long way in helping us to address this issue, and that is something that the Workers' Party manifesto has sought to address.
Yeah. So I think based on these policy solutions that you have talked about, Jamus, it's really also taking a very close look into the imbalances in bargaining power that a lot of these women have in society, and what we can do with our policy solutions to then correct them as a result of that. So thanks very much, everyone, for sharing your thoughts today. I think we can pretty much agree that while Singapore has made great strides, it is important for us to keep looking after the people and keep looking out for the people who have fallen through the cracks. So to end off, perhaps, for all of your closing statements, you could share what would you say to a woman voter? Like, why is it important that we have the Workers' Party in Parliament?
We all want a Singapore that's a great place to live and raise a family. We believe that having more Workers' Party MPs in Parliament will give you more bargaining power so that the government will listen to your concerns. So please make your vote count. Vote for the Workers' Party.
Living in Asia as we do, it's, I think, perhaps common for us to attribute a lot of these lack of gender diversity to norms that are cultural in nature. I think we sell ourselves too short because when you think about it, a lot of these so-called cultural norms actually arrived relatively recently. So one thing that I think we believe at the Workers' Party, and we have tried to explain in both our manifesto and this panel, is that we have a diversity of policies to try to ensure genuine diversity of representation in policymaking. And so if you believe in this diversity of policies, we encourage you to vote for the Workers' Party.
Even though we had a really great conversation today, it's barely scratched the surface. We need to take sexual assault seriously and have stricter punishment for perpetrators. The government needs to set the tone in this country and enact legislation that protects and uplifts our women. I'm confident with the voices entering the space that we can create a Singapore for everyone, including our women.
如果我们希望新加坡成为一个公平、公正、透明的国家，我们就需要一个强而有力的反对党进入国会，请投工人党一票，让您的一票成就未来。谢谢。
Thank you all the panelists for all of your closing statements, and I would like to thank all the viewers at home for staying with us tonight, and we hope that, with this show, you better understand where the Workers' Party stands on some of these issues, and we hope that you make your vote count. So do consider voting for the Workers' Party. Thank you and good night.